Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Game podcast, where we help you monetize your message and magnify your voice. I'm your host. And before we get started, have you gotten your copy of the new Writer's Game, The Business Behind Your Story book? Look, if you are interested in writing, publishing, and profiting from your story, you got to grab the book. You got to click the link in the description, grab the book, and start your journey of telling your story and transforming lives. But today, as always, it's not about me. But before we get into the message, the question of the day that I want you to be able to answer into the comments, I'm going to ask my guest right when she comes on. The question of the day is, what version of you that you're displaying with the world do you need to kill so that you can become the version of you that God has intended for you to be? All right. So, my guest today is, she's a rock star. She doesn't even know how much of a light that she truly is, but in so many ways of people's darkness, just her presence and her poise and how she shows up in the world, leveraging her story, creates a light effect in so many people's lives. This woman has been through so many different things, but through her trials of resiliency, of grit, and of finding herself, and then being able to create a way to rebrand herself and rebrand her identity. She's gonna talk to you all today. So Carmen, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you today?
I am literally fantastic, literally fantastic. So before we get into the weeds of the message, talk to me about who you are really at the core, and how are you leveraging your story and your testimony to be able to change lives around the world.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. This means a lot to me. And truth be told, this is my first podcast interview. So lucky you.
Good, good.
But thank you so much. But my name is Carmen Cousin, and I am the owner of the brand Life High Performance Coaching. I help and I specialize in helping women solopreneurs basically build their personal brands to gain clarity, attract ideal clients, and make more money in their business.
Mm,
My story starts off, well, I mean, I could start my story in a lot of different places, but I'm going to start it where I actually came about personal branding and saw the difference that it made in my life. So this was in 2018. I was working for a company, and during that time, I was going through a lot of different transitions. I had just recently separated from my husband, and we were going through a very, very rough divorce. And during that time, literally, I would say probably 2 weeks after the divorce trial ended, my boss calls me into her office and told me basically, we are reorganizing, and I have to let you and your team go. So, I mean, I was kind of like, wait a minute, what? What's happening? Okay, got it. Was pretty calm, pretty cool at the moment, but of course, all the things in my mind started coming up. Like, okay, what am I going to do? What's next? Luckily, I had a little bit of a grace period of where I could start getting myself together and my team together. However, going into this, I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't know what was next for me. Yet I had folks telling me, "Oh, I got you. I got an opportunity for you. I have this. I have that." And so I felt pretty good about my opportunities. I mean, at that point in time, I think I had about maybe 16 maybe years in marketing experience, and had worked for a lot of different organizations. So I felt like my resume was good enough to get a new position. And so when it came time that I was ending that job, I went after these next opportunities, and they were not there. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on now? And so I had to take a step back. I was applying for jobs. I was networking as best as I could, but nothing was moving for me.
mm,
And I just could not understand why. I was very frustrated. I started doubting myself. I started doubting all of the, like I said, the 16 years of marketing experience. I was like, what is all of this for if I can't even get an interview?
of
An
course.
interview, you know? So during that time, I just basically, again, kept networking. And then I stumbled across, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was something that spoke to me and talked about intentionality. It's like, what are your intentions?
Of course.
And so I started thinking about it. I was like, well, my intentions is to get a job. I need a job. That's what my intentions are.
Sure.
But it was deeper than that. It was like, what are your intentions about life?
Mm,
And are you being intentional about your life?
mm,
And I really started thinking about that. And I thought to myself, well, I want a job, but I don't want just any kind of job, because at that level of my career, I had built up a resume, and I wanted a job that was going to really allow me to be my best and to showcase my skills and my expertise. Um, and so then, I was like, well, I'm intentional about that piece. And then I started thinking about my values and what I wanted in my life at that time. Again, I was going through a crazy divorce, and it was very trying on me and my children at that time. So I knew I was going to need a job that was going to give me flexibility to do the things I needed to do, to be the kind of mom that I needed to be. So what I ended up finding out was I was literally sitting down, writing out how I wanted my life to be, not how my life was happening, not the circumstances,
mm.
So
I want to unpack that really quickly before you
sure,
move forward, because I think that somebody missed that just now,
sure.
right? Watching is in the midst of a separation, in the midst of you getting let go of a company, in the midst of you transitioning as a mom, transitioning as a wife, transitioning as a person. You weren't focusing on your circumstance, you were focusing on what you were called to be and where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Walk me through, like, talk to somebody right now that's in
Mhm.
that circumstance, that may be going through that separation, that may be going through this massive change. Why is it more important? Why was it more important for you to focus on where you wanted to go rather than sit in the feeling of where you were at that moment?
Well, to be completely honest, I sat there for a while. I did. I sat there for a while because that was what I knew, right? But I think it's important, because when so many things are coming at you, and you are going through these challenges and this adversity, it is very, very easy to second guess yourself, for your self confidence to go down, for you just to accept that this is life because it's happening, right? So then if you start to believe and think about those types of things, then you will that is where your energy is. Your energy is in the circumstances and not in how you want it to be. One of the things I always think about is that the answer and the problem are not on the same spectrum. So I couldn't really figure out the answer to my problem by being in the circumstance. I had to go and set it up to say to myself, okay, Carmen, where do you want to be? And so that's what I would say to someone right now who is going through a hard time, who is going through a lot of different changes, who are going through a lot of different circumstances in their life that are challenging, is not to focus so much on where you are right now, but to set your mind on where it is you want to go, which is where the intentionality came into play.
That's good. That's good. And Carmen, we've had plenty of conversations in regards to your story, in regards to a lot of the different things. It's easier said than done, right? It's
Very
it's
much so.
it's easy to tell somebody, when you're in this tough time, focus on the future, you're gonna get through it. What are what was an affirmation, a word of encouragement, or something that you wish you would have heard as you were going through that time that you would like to share with somebody today?
Well, I tell you what really helped me continue to move forward. And when I say focus on the future, I don't mean that in a sense of forgetting where you are right now, because you must appreciate where you are now in order to move forward.
Mm,
So appreciating where you are and not being down in where you are two different things.
that's good.
They're two different things. So I would say the thing that really got me through it was, and this came from my 11th grade AP US history teacher, Miss Putnam. Hmm, who had went through a lot of different trials in her life with cancer and things like that. But I remember her telling me in 11th grade that this too shall pass. And that is something that I just held on. And you never know when those things that a teacher or someone has told you back in the day, when that stuff will really come to where you have to actually put it into practice. And that's just what I had to do. I had to keep telling myself, this too shall pass. And in that time of while it's passing, I was also creating and carving out the life that I wanted to have. You see, the thing about it is, I was married at that time for 17 years. I have 2 daughters during that marriage. So I spent a lot of that time being a supportive wife and also being a mother, which 2 of the things that I loved and wanted to do. But during those times, I didn't really feed myself. I didn't really pay attention to myself. I didn't think about what I wanted and what I needed, and became a codependent person. And so mostly all of the things that I wanted and felt and needed in my life was based upon someone else, whether it be my children or whether it be my husband or whether it even be family. But it was never about Carmen. I didn't know her. I didn't know her. I knew what she did. I knew what she had been through, but I really didn't know her. And so I started this process of really getting to know myself and asking myself, well, what do you want? What do you want out of life? What kind of life do you want to live? And that transferred over into, what kind of job do you want to have? What kind of career do you want? And so in that process, I started a really deep personal development and getting to know who I was. Number one, starting off with writing down all of the beliefs that I had about myself that were false. Okay. Completely false, and were completely limiting me from being the best person I can be. And then I started thinking about my vision. What is it that I want in my life? How do I want to feel? What do I want to accomplish? And there was something about it all that it was really therapeutic, and it also took me back to who I knew I was even as a little girl. I was a champion for people. Anyone who knew me back in the day knew that I had a mouth, and I was always talking, and I was always advocating for something or someone. And it was like, well, Carmen, why aren't you advocating for yourself? Why aren't you advocating for you? Why aren't you championing you? And so I started that process of really getting to know who I was, what I wanted, and then, what I have to offer to people. And so during that process, I went through all of that. I took a Clifton Strengths Finder study, because I was like, I want to know my strengths, And I did all of this work, but it was great work because I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know these things about myself. And so then I started thinking, well, how can I take these strengths? How can I take the values that I have, and how can I turn that into a value for a company? At that time, it was about a company, right? It was like, how can I do that for a company? Because what I ended up figuring out was that people knew me, but they didn't know me. Exactly. They didn't know they didn't really know what I was doing with my professional career, which meant that if they didn't know me, then the businesses really didn't know me. The companies that I was going after for these jobs, they didn't know me. They didn't know what problem I solved. And it was very interesting because I'm a brand marketer, and that's what we do. We market our products and to our marketplace and to our audience by solving problems for our customers. So I had to ask myself, what problem do you solve, Carmen?
That's good, Carmen. I think that a lot of people, and somebody listening right now, right, is trying to go off and solve the problems in their family and their company and their business, all of these areas, but they don't understand the problems that exist within their heart, within their soul, that if they just unpack that a little bit, they would be able to impact the workplace or their families or all of these other spaces in a lot more intentional way. So it's how you're sharing your story is beautiful, because you saw this rise of this woman as a mom and as a wife, and then this challenging moment. And in any story, there's a beginning, there's a rise, there's that climax that really transforms who you are, and then it's a descent and then the conclusion.
Yeah.
When you think about your story though, Carmen, what would you say was the catalyst to you becoming the woman that people know today? What would you say that climax of your story was? What was that moment? Walk me through that.
That moment. I would say it's really it's a culmination of a lot of little moments.
Mm.
Because I would definitely say my divorce was a catalyst in me becoming a new woman, a new person, because I no longer had that identity of wife,
Wow.
which was an identity that I respected and that I honored and was a big part of me.
Mm.
So that was a transformation for me from going from wife to now Carmen and now mother. And then also when I was laid off from my job, that was a big catalyst as well, because again, now my identity is changing yet again from what it was that I was doing at that company to now I'm becoming something new. So I would say for me, the catalyst has been through a lot of transformations in my life.
Mm.
My spirit insect or animal, whatever you want to call it, is a butterfly. And I didn't know back in the day why I love butterflies and why I got a
Yeah.
tattoo of a butterfly. But now I know it's because of the transformation.
Mm.
It's because of the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly to cocoon, because of the process that you have to go through. Because I'll tell you this, during all of those times when I was going through those things, I was in isolation. I was
Mm.
in a cocoon. It was dark. It was dreary. I didn't know what was going to be on the other side. I just had to trust. I had to trust and believe that that any and everything that I was going through was for a reason and was also for my benefit. And I had to hold on to that, even in the times when I was just like, I can't do it anymore.
Mm.
I can't make it. This is too hard. I had to believe in that. And then what ended up happening is that when I came out of those times, when I came out of that cocoon, I was literally this new butterfly. I had energy. I had joy. I always had joy. Let me be clear about that. One thing about me is joy stays inside of me, but it was about happiness, because happiness is circumstantial, right? So I wasn't always happy, but so I reclaimed my happiness. I reclaimed, my spirit, and I felt more and more alive. And it just made me realize it's like this is the Carmen. This is the Carmen that I know. This is the Carmen that I love. What what is it about this experience? And so what I've just been doing is just really writing and journaling and taking account of what it is that basically lights me up. And
Mm.
I follow my bliss. And that is exactly what I do. And I also know that when I do go through hard times, because trust me, even more hard times have come since those times. I know what I need to do during those times to steady myself, to keep myself into alignment with my true self, so that I know that eventually I'm going to come back out of that cocoon into this new butterfly.
That's good, Carmen. That's good because I think a lot of times we often wear so many masks. We're this person at work, we're this person in a relationship, we're this person around our friends, and then when we get back, I heard something this morning. Shout out to Tim Ross and Charles Metcalf, and they were talking about wearing these masks is like tap dancing with and holding your breath at the same time. And by
Mhm.
the time you get through life and all these different things, by the time you come back home, you just, whew, finally, I can take them all off.
Yes.
And that's what really inspired the question of the day in regards to what version of yourself do you have to kill in this season so that you can be able to honor God in that way, so that you can show up in that version that He sees you as. How would
Mhm.
you answer that question?
Yeah, so I would say the versions that I have had to kill and kill again, because they sometimes kind of find a way to come back, um, is that version of perfectionism.
Mm.
It's funny because I've always thought that my perfectionism was just my high performance ability.
Yeah,
I thought it was just me being me, wanting to do my very best,
mm,
wanting to, always put my best foot forward. And it wasn't so much of perfectionism from what people would see from me or wanted from me. It was very much driven within, because what I ended up realizing was a lot of the struggles and a lot of things I was going through had nothing to do with the outside external world. It was all about what was going on inside of me.
Mm,
So I understood that my high performance, my ability to get things done in a manner that I wanted it to be, was driven from a place of insecurity.
that's good.
And it was driven from a place of thinking that if I do it right, if I do it great, if I do it fast, if I do it efficient, if I do it all of these different types of way of things, then people will not leave me. They
Mm,
won't criticize me. They won't they won't they will see me as valuable.
that's good.
So I was placing all of my worth and who I was and what it was that I was doing and how I was doing it. So then when it came time to where I couldn't perform at a high level,
Oh,
then I started thinking something was wrong with me.
mm,
And so when I did that work and I started to understand, no, my value is not in what it is that I do and how I do it. My value is in me, just
indeed.
by being me,
Of
just
course.
by being here.
Of course.
That's what makes me valuable. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a high performer. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do things at your best ability. But to tie that to your worth and your value, that's the problem. And
That's good.
so once I understood that, and let me tell you what blew that up. What blew that perfectionism up was my divorce. My
Mm,
divorce blew perfectionism out the water because it was like, well, you know, marriage ended. It's not perfect.
walk me through that feeling though, because I think that a lot of people talk about the event, but don't express the emotion. Because
Mm,
you invested 17 years of your life and that life created this identity that you walked in and you did it to your absolute best. Walk me through the emotion that that event caused.
um, I mean, it was unlike anything at that time that I had ever been through. Again, 17 years of an identity that was formed and created. And my mom and dad are married to this day. So marriage and family is very, very important to me.
Mm,
Um, and it felt like failure.
wow.
It felt like failure. It felt like a personal failure. It felt like a family failure. It felt like I failed my daughters. It felt like failure.
Mm,
And it was, it, I just remember, right after, the separation happened, it was literally 6 weeks of grieving, just grieving, grieving, grieving. And my dad, I remember him, he told me, he was like, I know you're going through a hard time. I can't imagine. He was like, but you got not four set of eyes, but you got four eyes looking at you right now
mm.
at what you're going to do next.
And
And it
no,
kind of shook me a little bit. And I was like, oh, he's talking about my daughters. He's talking about my daughters looking at me right now
wow.
at what I'm going to do next. And that kind of snapped me out of it because
Mm,
I was so into myself,
of
so
course.
into woe is me, which I needed that time. Don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
you need time to grieve. But it snapped me out of like, wait a minute, this isn't just about me. I have two daughters right now who need their mother to be the best that she can be. And so that really started me in the process of healing, starting the process of getting myself together. And then, like I said, of course, about a year or two later, then the layoff happened. So then that was another place where I had to, basically reclaim myself and decide what I wanted to do. So perfectionism was a piece of me that definitely had to die. And another piece of me that had to die in order for me to become my best self is imposter syndrome.
Mm,
And I experienced that a lot during my time of looking for a new job.
mhm.
Um, like I said before, because I wasn't getting the calls, I wasn't getting the interviews, I started doubting that all the work that I had put into place over those 14, 15, 16 years was not good enough. And
Exactly.
that some kind of way, it was a fluke that had had all of these positions and did all of these wonderful things. And it's very easy to get into a place like that. And so what I had to understand about myself is that, again, Carmen, no, you're not a fluke. You're not an imposter. how can you be an imposter in your own life?
Mm,
How
that's
can you be an imposter in your own life?
that's a whole word.
Like that just makes no sense whatsoever. And so I had to ask myself, who's telling you these things? Where is this
Mm,
coming from? And again, getting deep, really going through the beliefs. Those are the limiting beliefs. Imposter syndrome, perfectionism, part of limiting beliefs. I had to start acknowledging, recognizing those things, and then replacing them with more empowering beliefs.
I heard something earlier and it talked about vulnerability is only dangerous to your pride if the world sees you as something that you know deep down that you are not. And
Mm,
I think about that so often, and it challenges me to even think about it in my life because in so many different spaces, I find myself trying to show up as the person that will be recognized, not realizing that I'm gonna get the recognition regardless if I just show up as myself, right?
yes.
You know, in your period of time of this transformation that you're going through, there's been some lessons that you've learned that are super important, and you've shared so many of them throughout this conversation. What would you say the lesson was that took the hardest for you to learn?
Ooh, I've learned a lot of lessons. The hardest for me to learn. That's definitely with my perfectionism. And I would say the lesson is done is better than perfect.
That's good.
Show up.
Mm,
Just show up. Show up and believe in your ability to be there.
mm,
I think that I know for me, I surprise myself a lot because I can overanalyze and I can think myself out of a situation before I even do it. Oh, Carmen, this is going to be too hard. Carmen, do you even know what you're about to do? Oh,
good.
all of these different thoughts. But yet, when I show up, when I get there, I always know what to do. I
Exactly.
always know how to perform. I
Mm,
always know how to be because the power is in the now. The power is in the moment that you are actually there. It's not before while you're thinking about it. And it's not after when you're sitting there thinking about, oh, I should have did this or I should have done that. The power is in the moment. So show up, be present.
that's good. That's good. We're gonna do something a little different today. So one thing that we're implementing on the Writers Game show is a rapid fire exercise where I say a word and you say a word back to what that makes you feel, or what you think about first. The first thing that
Okay.
comes. All right.
First
Um,
thing that come to my mind, oh gosh, I have no filter.
thing. No filter, no filter. So I think that a lot of times it's interesting kind of seeing how people associate certain words based upon their stories as well. I'll
Yeah.
start with an easy one. Carmen.
Oh gosh, love.
Doubt.
It's okay.
Fear.
Oof. Oof.
You thought about a few words in between.
I did. I did. It's not real.
Hmm. Marriage.
Sacred.
Branding.
Meaning.
Out of all of the experiences in your life, what moment has given you the most meaning?
Out of all the experiences in my life, ooh, the most meaning. Mm, wow, that's a tough one. You know, I would say that being a mother
Oh,
is very, very meaningful for me. I basically have crafted my life to be in a position to be the best mom I could be to my two daughters. I take that responsibility, that privilege, that honor very, very seriously. Probably too seriously sometimes because I need to give myself a break. I'm hard on myself in that sense. But being a mother has definitely meant so much in my life and has definitely been if not the most meaningful, but definitely one of the most meaningful things in my life. for sure.
Okay. I know we had a conversation over lunch a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and you talked about the the challenges of being a mother in separation and divorce and in transition and moving, and sometimes the effect that that has on your children.
Hmm.
And I'd like for us to sit in that for a second. And, I guess the question that follows is, if you had 30 seconds or 60 seconds to share a message with your daughters that would stay with them the rest of their lives, and today was your last day, and this is the last message that you would be able to share with them that would be able to last forever, what would you say?
I would say to them that you are worth it. You are worth it. You are the prize. You are loved, and you're valuable. Um, I really do feel like my job as a mom to my daughters is to remind them of their worth and their value. Because when you know that about yourself, then that saves you from a lot of heartache. It doesn't save you from everything. You're still going to go through challenges. You're still going to go through hard times. But when you really, truly understand and know your value and worth, there is nothing that you cannot do. And so I would just remind them that they're worth it, they're valuable, they're the prize, and that their mom and their dad, we love them. So that is what I would that's what I try to do every day with my daughters, is remind them of who they truly are. Because again, when I got back to myself, when I remembered who I was, when I remembered how valuable I was and how worth it that I am that I'm worthy, I took off. And
Mm,
what I mean by took off, I mean, I started challenging myself. I started going after opportunities. I started believing in myself more. I started putting myself in uncomfortable situations to learn more things. And so I stopped surviving and I started thriving. And
mm.
so when you know that about yourself and when you really fill yourself up with that, there's nothing you can do. That's what I would tell my babies.
Nah, that's beautiful. I love it. I love it. It's so interesting because I've asked that in a different way to different parents, and it's sometimes disappointing when a parent doesn't have the words to be able to say, just off the cuff. So I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because as a parent, we're trying to do so much with our children. We're just trying to, I mean, and then you got to think about too where a parent is with their child. If it's a young parent, I mean, if it's a parent with a young child, there's different things that you're looking for, you're trying to do. So I think it's my children are 17 and 19. Yes, the 19-year-old is still my baby. She will always be my baby. Um, but so I'm in a different age group with my daughters, and so it's hard. It's hard for parents to be able to, figure out exactly what to say. Because I mean, if you're a parent, that I believe that most parents are, we just want to do best by our children.
Of course. You
Yeah.
know, I think that in that doing the best that we can, it's sometimes, looking back at, parents often feel a sense of guilt or disappointment.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess, one of the questions that I have for you is, what is one mistake that you've made that you hope that your daughters don't have to ever repeat?
Yeah, I would say I didn't really, and I did this out of a form of protection, thinking that my daughters needed to see me, because I take my responsibility as a mother so fiercely. I didn't let them see the vulnerable side of me.
Mm,
I wanted them to see the strong mom who had it together all the time, who was there to be their advocate, who didn't get tired, who didn't get scared, who didn't get lonely. I didn't want them to see that because I already felt like they were going through so much. So I felt like I had to be that strong pillar for them. But what I ended up realizing was that yes, I can be all those things, And I can also be lonely, tired, scared. You know, I can be both. And I think showing my daughters, not showing them that they only got to see a side of me that was always an epitome of strength.
Of course.
But so then eventually over the last 2 years, I did start showing more of my vulnerability to them.
Yeah.
And I saw that they could handle it, and I saw that they appreciated it, and I saw that they were like, mommy, we're here for you too. And so it really was like a healing balm to my heart when I could show up and be all that I am to my daughters, the strong and also the not strong.
That's
And I
true.
think that also is a lesson for everyone just in the world. Like, it's okay sometimes not to be okay.
Mm.
It's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to share your challenges and what you're going through. It does not make you any less of anything as a person. It makes you a human being.
I think that's powerful perspective, and I think there's somebody right now, Carmen, that's listening to this, that's like, I wanna share that thing. I want to share that piece of my story. I want to be more vulnerable, and sometimes it requires us just being able to be more vulnerable in our stories. You know, what is something in your story, in your life, that it's vulnerable and it would shake up some things and probably make some people feel uncomfortable, that you would feel comfortable sharing today to just give them the courage to be able to share their vulnerability with the world as well?
Let's see. I mean, I do feel like I'm pretty transparent about my challenges with anxiety. I've spoken about it a little bit before, but I haven't really delved into how I've been able to cope throughout the years. So in 2011, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. And I didn't know anything about anxiety at that time. But come to think about it, when I look back over my life, I saw where it had showed up. But because of my high performance and my ability to be able to perform, I masked it and it wasn't seen. I felt it in my body, but it wasn't seen to the outside world. So once everything that was going on in my body actually started coming out to the outside, that's when I realized there was a problem. There were some things that were going on and it started impacting my life. So I would say, people don't know that I'm a high performing anxious person.
You're doing it well. You're doing it well. You
I'm a
know,
high performing anxious person. And it has the ability to be able to speak about it and talk about it is freeing. There's still a lot of misunderstandings about it because, again, I don't present that way. But it's been a really great journey for me to learn how to be in this place with anxiety and also be well and be healthy.
of course. And I think that comes up oftentimes in our lives. What we pour out is oftentimes what's inside of us. We can't pour orange juice out of a milk carton in the
Right.
store. What's in that carton and what's inside of you is going to be poured out into the world. If you had one moment or one word or one scripture that you would want to pour into the world right now, what would that be?
Hmm. I would just say, be you. Be you. The world needs you. The world needs all of us. It needs all of our stories. It needs all of our challenges. It needs all of our wins. It needs us. The reason why I'm able to share my story and share the things that I've been through is because I've seen someone else do it. And I've seen someone else have the courage to do it and still be who they needed to be. And
Exactly.
so I'm hoping that my story, the things that I've been through, will help give someone else the permission to be themselves. And when I say themselves, I mean everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that you're trying to work on, the things that you're hiding, at night, that you're crying about, all those things. And not to say that everything has to be put on full blast and has to be on social media. No, some things can be private. There's nothing wrong with that. But if those private things are holding you back from being your best self and from you sharing your gifts with the world, then I think that's the time when you got to start thinking about it. Is it worth it? Is
That's
it worth it? So the world needs you. Be you.
I think that this conversation is so necessary. And anybody listening right now, understand that your story is not over when the event happens. The story is really just beginning. And in this process of rebranding yourself, if you can continue to be yourself, learn yourself, and navigate this journey and this adventure of finding purpose, then you will be able to get to the other side of being able to share your story with courage and creating the calling that's been already crafted for you at birth. Um,
Absolutely.
Carmen, this has been phenomenal. Where can people find you and how can they continue to learn from some of the things that you've shared with us today?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at the Brand Life Coach. You can also find me on my website, which is the Brand Life High Performance Coaching, or thebrandlifehpc.com is where you can find me. I'm also on LinkedIn at Carmen Cousin. And yeah, that's about it. Those are the three places that you can find me.
I love it. Anybody that's watching, leave a comment, leave a share, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. But after all of that, go check out Carmen. Give her a follow,
Yeah.
purchase her products, ask her questions, and engage with her. This is another episode of the Writer's Game podcast where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. And we'll see you guys next episode.
Thank you.